In the previous tutorial, we introduced you to various methods for setting up the EP5 drive. In this tutorial, we want to review the different ways to set the frequency for the drive together. We can set the frequency of the IP5 drive in 8 different ways. To do this, from the DRV parameter group, we enter the frequency mode parameter. Press the program key, the blinking cursor appears, and with the up and down joysticks we can navigate between the parameters. The first parameter is keypad 1, which is used when you want to set the frequency on the drive and apply it to the motor via the keypad. The next parameter is keypad 2, which is for when you detach the keypad from the drive and install it on the panel door. The next parameter, V1, is for applying frequency via 0 to 10 volt input voltage signals. The next parameter, VIS, is for applying frequency via input voltage signals from -10 volts to +10 volts. The next parameter, I, is for applying frequency via 0 to 20 milliamp current signals. The next parameter, V plus I, in this parameter, the drive applies the algebraic sum of the voltage and current signals to the motor. The next parameter is pulse, which sets the frequency for us based on pulse signals. The next parameter is INT485. Through the network, we can apply frequency to the drive. And the last parameter is PID, which allows us to set the drive frequency based on PID control. The first parameter we have is keypad. To set the frequency via the keypad, all you need to do is set the frequency mode parameter to keypad and return to the main screen. I will run the motor. On this screen, if we press the program key, the blinking cursor appears, and with the shift key, we can move around and change the frequency. For example, we can bring it down from 60 Hz to, say, 30 Hz. As you can see, the frequency has decreased. Now I will set the frequency back to 60 Hz. I stopped the motor. The next mode we have in frequency mode is the V mode, which means applying the frequency through the analog voltage input from 0 to 10 volts. I select this parameter, but before we test this parameter, let me mention that for setting up analog inputs, whether they are voltage or current, it doesn't make a difference. We need to configure 4 points for the drive. What are these 4 points? First, the minimum input signal to the drive. Second, the minimum frequency applied to the motor. Third, the maximum input signal to the drive. And fourth, the maximum frequency applied to the motor. To put it simply, we need to specify for the drive what frequency to apply to the motor for a given input signal. For example, for an input signal of 0 to 10 volts, control the motor from 0 to 60 Hz. To set these 4 points on the IP5 drive for the analog voltage input, we need to go into the I/O parameters. We group together and use I.2, I.3, I.4, and I.5 to set these 4 points. With I.2, we set the minimum input signal to the drive, which in frequency mode V 1.0 is the parameter. The next parameter, I.3, sets the minimum frequency applied, which we have set to 0 Hz. The next parameter, which is I.4, is for the maximum input signal, meaning we set it to 10 volts. The next parameter, I.5, is the maximum applied frequency. Now, our drive has the capability to control the motor from 0 to 60 Hz with an input signal from 0 to 10 volts. Here, for the 0 to 10 volt input signal, we use a simulator module and we need to connect it to the V positive, V1, and 5G terminals. I've connected the module to the drive. Now for the 0 to 10 volts that the module applies to the drive controls the motor from 0 to 60 Hz. Since we're starting up using the keypad, I'll run the motor. And when I turn the knob, the frequency changes according to the voltage I provide. As I increase the voltage, you can see that the frequency starts to change. For example, if I set it to 5 volts, it shows about 30 Hertz. I'll go up to 10 volts, and when I give 10 volts to the drive increases the frequency up to 60 Hertz.